next generation of women leaders in Israel and Palestine. We have a video. It's going to run about 14 minutes. Hi.
Hi.
And then we'll tell you more about, or this may hopefully stimulate lots of questions. And we are here to tell you as much as you want to know about our organization and what our hopes and dreams are.
A year ago, this summer, my best friends died in a terrorist attack. They just wanted to go shopping and have fun, and they were crossing the street, and they died. And it was my two best friends.
I live in Jenin, and it's really bad situation there. So I came to the camp, and inside me, full of pain, full of, you can say, hate, and a lot of suffering. Like I faced a lot of suffering, where like I had my own experience with Israeli soldiers. Like they kick us from my home many times.
I had a very difficult year this year. I had to go to therapy. I had no idea what's like death. I mean, and they didn't live their life yet. They're like only 16.
The only people I met from the other side were in the checkpoints, were in this uniform and soldiers. So like I came here, and what I expected to meet the same people, but when I really realized that they are human like me, they are just really so normal like me, and they love peace as all the as I do.
Creativity for Peace is a year-round program of sustained dialogue between Palestinians living in Palestine, Israeli Jewish girls, and Palestinians living in Israel. They begin their friendships outside Santa Fe for 3 weeks. We bring maybe 13 to 15 girls here, and they have dialogue in the morning, integrated arts in the afternoon, and then lots of outside activities in New Mexico and the surrounding area. They learn to trust each other, they gain a deeper understanding of the other that they've never met, and what's really important is they continue that dialogue as they return to their homelands.
I'm attending CFP because this is my way to be a social activist, and this is my way to work toward peace.
I came because I wanted to meet girls, Palestinian girls, that I never met before, and I think it's important.
I wanted to come here because I thought that if I came here, there would be like hope for the future.
I want to reach the peace, to reach the goal. My goal is to make peace with the Jewish girls, with the Palestinian girls, to have fun with them also, not to just cry, just to share our bad feelings.
But you weren't there, and I tell you from my experience that the trust that we had for each other is not something that you can throw away. I mean, I really believed her because this is what was there. It was there, the trust.
And it's really about getting what's perceived as an enemy to sit in the same room and to share their stories of what it's like to live in conflict, violence, and war, based on the idea that an enemy is a person whose story you haven't heard.
Like to sit in the dialogue, it's really mean a lot to me because like there are Israeli and Palestinian and Arab Israeli sitting in one room and not fighting.
We said what hurts us and memories back, and we cried a lot. And I shared in my stories, and all of them shared, and all of us cried. But you know, tears heals, and it makes you more stronger.
I felt like when I cried, so I saw many girls who cried with me, who joined me, and it was really touchable. I mean, they felt with me. They gave me the feeling that they really care about me, even that they are Jewish or they're Palestinian, but they care about me.
This is really healing to see these people, like, for example, like for last year, I was talking and the girl her brother was in the army. So do you know how it's really hard for her brother in the army, and I'm telling her how much we hate the army and how much we suffer from their army, and it really was hard for her on both sides.
Let's say they've had a hard day in dialogue, a lot of crying, or a lot of anger, or debating the issues. Then we let the art teachers know, okay, today they have to have fun.
I really felt like there's some connection between us and like we get each other before without saying any words.
Yeah. I couldn't talk, but she's like, I want to say something, and she's like, she said it already.
I think the art room is powerful. I mean, you can express yourself. No one can judge you. You are totally free there with your thoughts, with your ideas, and you can do whatever you want, and no one will say it's not beautiful, because I did it, and you can't say it's not beautiful. I like it.
We did a collage that I really liked. It was a collage of war, and then peace, and then what's between. And it really made us think a lot, because we found lots of things of the war, and we couldn't like find things for the peace. Not a lot. We didn't think about it until we finished our collage, and it was touching. It was touching to see, to ask why are we in this situation? Why can't we find more things of peace? Do we know what's peace at all? I mean, what is peace? I never lived in peace.
And here, in this nature and this place, you have peace. And I think that it's our right to live some peaceful days, because we don't have it. In my country or in my village, I don't have it.
After lunch and art, then every day it's gonna be different. Sometimes we're going out, sometimes we're having guests. Also another fun activity which is considered as a fun, but it has a meaning beyond the fun. The ropes course. It's climbing and really fun activity, but it's also working with the trust. We have Arabs camper and a Jewish one, so both of them need to help each other to climb the ropes course.
Each night we dance. We put some music, Arabic, Hebrew, and English, and like the Palestinian, like we teach the Israelis how to dance Arabic dancing, and they teach us how to dance, and it was really great.
I think one of the most important aspects of the program is the activities they do together, they're swimming at a friend's home in Santa Fe, or they're eating a pizza together. That's when they can sit there and think and feel, this is what my life would be like with a Palestinian, an Israeli without war. We would just be having fun together. Our buildings are all set in nature on 40 acres. It's very peaceful. And it's very healing, because after a long day of crying or anger or fear or whatever, I see them walking around in the fields, you know, watching the sunset 2 by 2 or 3 in a group. And they would never be able to do that back home.
After I came to here, after I attended CFP, I'm living with the new people together in the same house, sharing the same bedroom, right? Sharing the same bedroom. So it shows me that we can live together. We shouldn't live in violence environment, and this is not the way to live.
We had a closing ceremony. I felt like a good vibe, like really from everybody in the circle, and I really felt power for all these women around us, like all of us together. And it was sad because we had to leave, and other girls cried, I cried, but it was also so much good feelings. And I felt, I don't know, that we are all connected, and really the girls love, and I think I really felt peace.
So after the 3 weeks of bonding and friendships evolving, they go back home, and within 1 month, they meet again.
For example, last year when we had a meeting in Sylvie's house for the Christmas, and we were from all the sessions, and we had an amazing time, a beautiful time there. We went to the church together. We met Santa Claus. Yeah. Also, we had a tree, the Christmas tree, and we had a lot of fun there. And we had dialogue with our moms, and we talked. We shared our experience with our moms. I want to do something for my children's life. I want to change their life, because it's not fair to them to have the same life that I did.
I wish someday we will just live together, without walls, without checkpoints, without anything. Maybe with a bridge. We can have bridge between each other. This is okay. This is the bridge.
It's like we're seeds, and this seed will grow in our hopes, and it will be a tree, and then there will be fruits, and these fruits maybe will be peace.
We are from the 3 nations, and we live together. And we don't have any problem to live together. So leave us alone, and we will do our job.
So why not to share our feelings, to be together, and change our minds, to love each other, not just to hate each other, because we saw on the TV it's a bad thing. So I'll call for peace for all the world.
Girls are always the best introduction to the work that we do at Creativity for Peace. And our organization Creativity for Peace started in 2003, and since then we've had 14 camp sessions, and almost 200 young women have gone through our program. Our program consists of a camp session that's held just north of Santa Fe in Glorieta. on that land that you saw in the video. And it's a 3-week program. We bring an equal number of Israeli Jewish young women and Palestinian young women from back home to this campsite for 3 weeks. They go through dialogue, they go through art therapy, they go through different socializing activities, social activities I should say, not socializing, I'm not socialist. And through all these activities they learn to shed their hatred, they shed their prejudices, they become friends, and then they go home and they want to implement that in their homeland. The second part of our program continues in the Middle East. So they go back home to the Middle East, like you saw in the video. Within the first 30 days they meet again, and they continue to meet, and the program is open to any of the 200 girls who have been through the program. They continue to meet throughout the year. The young women who want to continue and learn to become leaders and use those skills in their communities, we have a young leader program for them. And we've had 40 young leaders go through the program. And so in this program, what they learn public speaking, they learn collaborative leadership. So they learn as an Israeli and a Palestinian to lead together, to make peace in their communities. Now, are there any questions? Yes, ma'am.
How many of the Jewish young women have ever seen the wall?
That's a good question. A lot of Jewish young women, when they come to the camp, they've never even met a Palestinian, and vice versa. A lot of young Palestinians have never met an Israeli except at the checkpoint, and so this sometimes is the first introduction for them to the other. And what we do on the campsite, there's a home where, for example, if we have 16 girls, all 16 girls live in this home. If there's a double bed, there's an Israeli girl with a Palestinian girl. And that's not to say that there aren't challenges sometimes. We've had some challenges. But what happens is after the 3 weeks, it turns out that if they come hating each other, they leave as friends, and they continue their friendship. But that's a good question. It's hard to say.
Where is the program based in Palestine? Is there like a center in Palestine and a center in Israel?
It's not based in one particular place. We have a staff in the Middle East. Our director of the program is Palestinian, who lives in Israel. And we also have, we have 2 dialogue facilitators. We have a lady from Israel and a lady from Palestine. They're the dialogue facilitators. When we have the young women here for the 3-week camp, we have house mothers. One is Israeli, one is Palestinian. So it's always equal. But we do have staff there. We don't have an office there. Is that correct, Glenn?
That's correct. We'll meet in homes or hotels or.
So you 2 travel back and forth too? You don't?
We are board members for the organization. The office is based in Santa Fe, and our executive director lives in Santa Fe. Our board members are Santa Fe, Albuquerque, and also are from the rest of the nation too, Texas and other parts. Yes, ma'am.
What are the reasons that the girls give for coming? Do their families send them? Do they want to come? Are they curious?
That's a great question. Some girls want to come and meet someone from the other side. They've never met a girl from the other side. Some women, young women, will tell you. We had one young leader the first time that she came. She said, "I wanted to go to America to go shopping." And others, like the Palestinian girls, they say, they come because they want to be able to tell what they perceive as their enemy, their story. And again, the same for the Israeli girls. They have their grievances. They want to be able to see someone face to face and say, this is what has happened in my lifetime. And what's unique about our program is that the girls are only allowed to speak their story. It comes from the heart. It's work of the heart. They don't say this, your people did this back in 1948, or this is my story, because at that point when that story is presented, in front of all the other girls in the room, no one can say you're wrong. And it's accepted, and they work from that point.
So we teach compassionate listening and authentic speaking, and that's what Lamia was talking about. So we try to reinforce I statements. I can talk about my experience, and try to keep the stories that have been passed down to them from not coming into it, because that's part of the problem, right? Is how far back do we want to go to prove that you're right or I'm right? So it's their personal stories, and that allows them to start trusting each other, and creating that safe container that I'm okay with saying whatever I can say about myself and how I feel, and what you say impacts me. Yeah.
And what kind of, other than having the two people in one person in Israel and one person in Palestine, what kind of support do they receive to continue that compassion? Do they get to continue practicing compassionate listening in a community, or teaching what they learned so that it grows?
Yeah, there's a few questions there. So they do get, so the women who choose to continue, I want to make a commitment more to this. There are generally 2 or 3 meetings a year that teach them emotional resiliency and many of the skills that are necessary, because when one goes home, you can be perceived as the enemy or the traitor or a lot of other things that are said to them. So the support happens not on a weekly basis or monthly, but we try to do it a few times a year. And then with social media now and Facebook, they're able to stay in contact with each other and support each other. And Lamia is part of the blog, and we can help that way. And when an event happened, like the Gaza war, we set up an extra meeting because it was necessary. One of our young women, well, one was injured and one was killed. So there was a lot of stuff up, and some girls chose to walk away that are now back with us. They've come back. But in that moment, it was really challenging for them to understand what are we doing and the reality on the ground.
I had a question regarding how the girls are selected and how is the program presented to them over there?
So there's an interview process, written and verbal, and there are some ground rules that, one of them being everybody has to speak English. It may be their 3rd or 4th language, but part of coming over. There is a desire, and it's more of an art than a science, but we're trying to see what seedlings are there for future leaders. So we're trying to select young women who really, there's something in them, there's a spark that we want to germinate. What was the other?
How is the program presented to them?
A lot of it's word of mouth, because we have a belief that if we were to put an advertisement in the newspapers, we'd probably have hundreds of kids who would want to do this. And our site only holds, we have a capacity of 20. Yeah.
Oh, if there's anybody else who had a question. These girls are all going, the ones from Israel will all have to be in the army in a couple of years. How do they feel about that? And what happens if they can become one of these leaders that continues on for a couple of years?
You have great questions. Thank you. I don't know if you remember the names of the young women who are on the video. One was Sivan. She had freckles on her face, one of the Israeli girls. She is one of the young women who attended camp and then served in the Israeli army. She served in the Israeli army, mandatory of course, for 2 years. And once she completed her 2-year term, she knew that her answers were still with Creativity for Peace. She came back as a young leader, and came back again last year as a young leader. And we've had another Israeli girl named Adi Goldstein. She continued through the Israeli army, and she spoke. She had a contingent of officers under her, and she spoke to them about her work at Creativity for Peace. We've had another one who refused, and we have some who have refused to serve in the Israeli army. But again, the program is open for whoever. It's open whether they leave or come back. It's always there for them. And so even after they've served, they feel like their heart is in the work that we do, and it's what's going to lead a different life for them.
Well, and were all of the Palestinian girls from the West Bank, or were some of them Palestinians living in Israel?
It's always an equal number. So say we have 16 girls, we have 8 Jewish Israeli girls, and of the 8 Palestinian girls, 4 of them are Palestinian girls living in Israel, and 4 are from the West Bank and Gaza. So there's always an equal number there. It's been a bit of a challenge in recent years to get young women from Gaza. As Glenn was mentioning, one of the girls who had gone through the program was killed. This year, 2 of the Palestinian young leaders had left our program, and out of respect to their friend who was killed, they wanted to come back and continue their work.
She was killed because she came, or was it due to fire from the Israeli army?
Her house.
Dr.
Yeah.
Oh, she was the daughter.
She was the daughter.
So it takes a lot of courage when they talk about why they come. It takes a lot of courage for them to choose to do this. I mean, just imagine. You're going to go halfway around the world. You're going to show up at a place that you don't know where you're going. There's enough anger and fear and hatred to easily fill up this room. And like Lamia said, your bedmate tonight is going to be the other, which is the enemy, and there's a perception that, am I going to make it through the night? Am I going to wake up in the morning? And it is remarkable of this transformation because of the staff and creating the safety that allows you to speak your truth and a lot of the pain that shows up from it. And over these 3 weeks, it is friendship, but it turns into a love fest often by the end, and it's that phrase of an enemy is one story I've never heard, and we believe that I mean, part of why camp is for young women is that grown-ups and governments, they're incapable of doing this right now. So young people have the opportunity, and we believe that, this generation and young women we will have years from now will become the next generation of leaders in their countries.
Mothers.
And mothers.
Yeah, there's 15 to 17 initially as campers, and of course our oldest young leader is probably 24 by now. I was struck earlier today when Miko Peled was speaking with that slide that he showed with the sign in Hebrew that says "Don't go past here" with all those exclamation points, and I was thinking that's what our young women do. They go past that sign, and the courage it takes to go past that sign and meet the person on the other side. It's what they do every summer, and it's just, if you have a chance to listen to KUNM. Excuse me, if you go on the website, they spoke this morning. We had the young leaders interviewed from this summer, and the link is on the website.
Peace Talks Radio.
I think the idea is a good one to put Christian Zionists in with Palestinians in America and have them talk.
Oh, wow.
Hear the story.
That's a great idea.
To make it like this is a human, this is a Palestinian, and because Christian Zionists thinks Palestinians are evil and all that, so it's just something that came to my head.
Yeah. I was thinking about that too, but I feel like with a lot of them, American youth, they have no clue just, you know, how extensive their government is involved in perpetuating this. And so I think it would be a hard conversation to have, but it's like, it would be extremely valuable for Americans to hear their stories, but I don't know how much they could participate other than listen. But I mean, it would be incredibly valuable for them to kind of be exposed to this.
So the last few summers we have had a circle of American girls and our young women who come here.
Yeah.
They spend an afternoon with each other listening. I mean, listening is unbelievably powerful and healing. We're hoping it continues from there, and that's where it starts.
You'll hear in the interviews from this morning that both girls will say one of the things that they took from their experience, not just the leadership and the public speaking and the courage, but also the listening. That before they don't consider themselves good listeners, but this made them actually stop and listen to the person who's talking. And the courage, you know, these the Palestinians have courage. One young leader, she actually accosted an Israeli soldier because he wouldn't let her pass after he let her father pass, and she spent some time talking with him until he finally let her pass. And stories like this on both sides, where they've gotten the courage that they wouldn't have had without this work.
Any possibility of doing something like this with young men?
I was wondering that.
Sure.
Who's going to do it?
Well, we're one of a number of camps, and there are other camps that have boys, young men in it.
Oh.
Yeah. Other organizations. This was, Rachel founded it, and we believe that, what's that phrase?
About the
Educated woman.
Yeah, educated, exactly.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
We've sort of incorporated that and continued that with, I think it was mentioned in the video that we've invited the mothers of some of the campers to join in the home group meetings.
But we haven't spoken, is the art therapy that happens in the afternoon. So, you know, a lot can show up in the mornings during the dialogue, and there are times I know when I can't say it in words. I'm shut down or I'm really angry, and we have therapists, trained art therapists on staff in the afternoon to allow it to show up that way. And that often is another way of just further healing and further support of showing how we're all connected.
Do you know if they continue with those healing, that they have some sort of healing process that they can continue at home? Do they continue to do, you know, do they have a therapist, an art therapist that they work with, or social work doing EMDR stuff? Or
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I know that in our gatherings that we have throughout the year, there's absolutely emotional resiliency as part of that. And but on a, you know, in the in-between times, we'll get there someday.
You've been on the news?
Excuse me?
You've been on the news?
I have.
No, not you, but the camp.
I don't know.
Maybe on local news?
Yeah, we've had articles written about us. This summer's Cocoon magazine issue, there's a very good article about many of the organizations. It focuses on us, but it talks about some of the other organizations that do it. And yeah, I mean, we have just moved into our second decade, and yet we're still fledgling, and we still have, you know, many of the questions that you asked are great, and we would love to do more. It's funding. You know? We just, you know, so how do we get more art therapists, or how do we have more consistency throughout their supported home? Has to do with, a lot of it's just resources. And,
What about the girls, the Palestinian girls on their headdresses? How is that handled?
they're, you mean as when they come here?
It's welcome.
It's welcome, absolutely. The last 2 summers it's been Ramadan, and you know, they're discouraged just because of the altitude and all the activities that they do. I mean, to go from the crack of dawn until sunset without eating or drinking it's hard on someone who's half the world away and, you know, at 6,000 feet. But all the religions are respected, and absolutely. And one of the young women in the video came back as a young leader with a headscarf. Yeah.
Do you ever have Israelis from settlements join?
I don't think we have yet.
Okay. I work for a company called People to People International, and last summer I led a delegation in Turkey, and it was called Peace Camp, and we brought 30 kids from around the world, and we had a young man. It was kind of interesting. He was from a settlement, he was secular, and he was bisexual. And then we had a Coptic Christian from Egypt, we had a Palestinian girl from Jenin, and they were absolutely shocked because they like hit it off immediately.
Oh.
I mean, absolutely hit it off, you know. I have so many pictures of them together, and it was like there was even more of a bond between them than the other kids, you know. They were drawn towards each other. And it just, you know, and honestly, the most conservative girl we had there was Coptic Christian from Egypt. And, you know, the bisexual thing was hard for her, but that was way harder for her than the fact that he was Israeli, you know. So it was just beautiful to see. And he had a really interesting story. He's like, I think, you know, he shared that his family lived there for economic reasons. And that was just so powerful for those adults to hear that and understand some of the reasons why, you know, Israelis live in the settlements. But
that is a big part of them being with each other. They demystify some of the beliefs or misunderstandings. They educate each other. They do that. I mean, we're just trying to create the space for them, and it's amazing what happens just letting them be with each other. You know, there can be a 3-mile separation between the two of them in their own schools, and they're each learning different histories. So that has to come and get kind of unpacked, and that's hard because they don't initially want to believe that there's another story, another history.
Absolutely. But I will agree with you that you know, especially that age group, we had 16 to 19-year-olds, and they just, you know, every peace camp we've ever had has been very, very successful, because once you bring people together and they share their experiences and stories, they become friends and they realize, you know, all of their similarities. But again, it's like funding to continue these types of programs, but absolutely they work.
You said it's called People to People International?
Yeah, it was started by Eisenhower in '56. Yeah. It was kind of interesting. He had, you know, at the end of his term as president and having served in wars, his conclusion on life basically was that peace was not going to be achieved through wars or through governments negotiating with one another. It was going to be through people coming together, breaking down those differences and understanding one another. So the whole mission is peace through understanding.
That's great. That's what brought me to this work, you know, because I grew up, my parents are Palestinian, grew up learning the history, knowing the history, having been there, and not ever knowing, so you know the history, but what do you do with it? How do you fix it? How do you go forward? And then the first camp session I went to was 2009, and I met one of the young leaders, and she had seen her father shot and killed by an Israeli soldier, and she was a young leader at this camp, wanting a different future for herself and her family and her community. And it's like, how do you not move forward with this? How do you not support this? And to speak to the respect of the religions, we had a talk. The 4 young leaders from last year spoke in Albuquerque, and the two Palestinians happened to both be Muslim, and they had been fasting. And so it was like right around sunset when it was time for them to break the fast. So the Israeli dialogue facilitator got up and got water for the two Palestinian girls. Well, you know, some adult in the audience was miffed that this person didn't give the Israeli girls water. So she got up, went to the snack bar, came back and gave the Israeli girls water. And were you there? No, you were there.
I was there.
Yeah. And so one of the Israeli girls, you know, asked for the microphone, and with such graciousness, she said, you know, I want to take a moment and acknowledge my two friends here who are Muslim, who have been speaking all day, traveling all day, and this is, you know, just sun just set, and it's time for them to break their fast. So she wanted to tell the lady, you know, we're okay. It's not about us, and it was just so beautifully done. So that's what we see with these girls.
Do you know what what she went on to be? I mean, like, where is she working now, and or what is she doing now, and
she's, you know, they continue, and we support them with whatever track they take. You know, we've had a young leader who made a presentation at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland last year. We have one young leader who now works at the Israeli embassy. You know, and they take with them what they've learned at Creativity for Peace. This particular young lady, you know, I follow I'm friends with them on Facebook, so I see, you know, what they're doing and how they're participating. And yes, that's part of it, is the continuation of what they've learned. Any other questions?
So every summer we have an open house that everybody's welcome to come to on the site. And then we also have this will be our third summer if we do it, a feast for peace, where it's a big gathering where you'll hear some of these young leaders tell their stories, and we get a lot of food from ethnic restaurants that donate, and there's usually dance there. We could not write what comes out of their mouths when they tell their stories. It's unbelievable what you hear and what you witness as their strength, their vulnerabilities, and the courage that comes out of their mouths and from them. So please, you can, you know, look at us on the website, and in the summer we have activities, and we may have some in off-season too for volunteers.
One of the images that struck me in there was just little puppy piles that they would make, you know.
That's I have to keep reminding myself that they're just teenage girls, you know, that they have all that kind of stuff going on, and yet we raise them to be these larger-than-life peacemakers at times, which they are, and they still have to, you know, go to school and pass their tests, and I imagine they have boyfriend issues, and, you know, and stuff with their parents, and, you know, and they want to be leaders and move this forward.
I was listening to them this morning on the radio, and they sound much older than their ages and much wiser. I mean, they say things, I say, my gosh, where did they think of this? It's amazing.
Have you ever had sisters of ones who have been there before?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Yeah.
And cousins.
Yes, they go back and they tell everyone they know about it. And so the next year, you know, the girls will come and tell us, oh yes, my friend was, or my sister was, or my cousin was the girl from this camp or that camp.
Yeah. There's also, you can pass this around, but speaking of cousins, I mean, you try to tell me looking at that picture who's who. They're all cousins.
How do you use volunteers?
For everything.
Besides that.
Well, during the summer, it can be anything from making a meal. At least once a day, we have volunteers who provide the meals for them, to being a driver and taking them around, to organizing house parties so we can let the community know about what we're doing, to there's cooking events, there's movies, I mean, because they are teenage girls, I mean, there's other social things for them to do. We had, I mean, the Feast for Peace, where we had a few hundred people come to, was volunteer driven. You know, we had a committee that did that.
Oh, I can't help with that.
It's a mailing list.
There's activities, so there's I'm thinking of some of the things they do. We have some women in the community who make quilts, and they volunteer and teach quilt making and knitting and those kind of things. So we use volunteers a lot.
I just walked in a little late, but I don't know if you talked about what the girls said on the radio this morning. Did somebody mention?
Please share.
What did you hear?
They, she was with her father, and they were going through a border across a checkpoint, and the soldier, Israeli soldier, said, "You can't go. Father can't go. She couldn't go," and so she appealed to his humanity, and used what she had learned here to talk to him as a human being, and he still said no, but she noticed that he paused for a second, and she was hoping that he would think about it later, about what she had said, about him being not just an Israeli soldier, but also a human being. And he did let them pass. So that seemed like a really practical. Yeah, and success.
And success.
And that's part of the emotional resiliency that's trained and reinforced, because I don't know if she would have done that a few years back.
No.
You know,
She mentioned something about learning how to speak out.
speak authentically, yeah. Yeah. And that's where the human being connection is. Because one of the things that's reinforced is they come thinking they're different from each other, and then realize, no, there's many connections and many threads, that we are all connected.
It really is something, because, you know, again, these girls are a great, these young women are a great introduction to the program, and it's really magical. And I think even the group that Glenn was talking about with the youth circle, when they get together with the American young women, I think they're also transformed. The young American women, adults are transformed by what they see with what these young women go through.
And Glenn, how did you get involved with Creativity for Peace?
I am a volunteer for Kitchen Angels, which is a group that makes food for homebound people. And in the first couple years, there was a man who made almost every meal before we got it up and running, where volunteers were coming. And I was on the same crew as him. And I kept saying, next summer, call me, I'll cut whatever, I'll slice and dice. And anyway, for 3 years this went by, and he never called. And then one day he said, well, I don't need to make food, but how about being on the board? So, yes.
I had the fortunate experience this summer of having someone that I'd had email communications with for years visit me from Gaza. She's 19. I met her when she was 16. And we went to her first movie in a theater, and you know, I said, oh, do you like to hike and take road trips? She said, I've never been on one, I wouldn't know. So But you said something that reminded me about how she really impacted my family and everybody in our environment. It was a surprise she was coming. I mean, we found out within 3 days that she could come, and so it was like, hi, I have this friend. And of course the hijab, and it's during Ramadan, you know, so she's not eating, and we're doing, it was mind-blowing. Everybody, by the time she left, we were all just weeping. We just felt like she was part of our family. Everybody fell in love with her.
How did you get to know her? By email?
I work at a blog, an Israel-Palestine blog, and we did a Mondo Awards thing a couple of years ago for a writing contest, and about something inspirational from the movement that worked this year, because we were, at the time, we were really, you know, it had been some really hard stuff that fall. And then at the same time, it ended up synchronizing, oddly enough, with the 2-year series out of Gaza anniversary of CASLA, which was the English department at the Islamic, the university there. So when these essays came in, and they were kind of coming in with the others, the quality was so intense and so good. She was 16. She won. And I mean, it just gives me chills to think that there's a 16-year-old girl that is so proficient in English. Right now she's trying to get in scholarship for Oxford, and I think she's going to be in for next year. So she's a few years into university. And so I started picking up more of her writing and putting it on our blog. We had a nice, beautiful Eid thing just about waking up and the candies and the cookies and children and Eid and in Gaza. And so we just back and forth. And then she went to a literature, like a camp in Iowa. And,
Same thing.
One of those.
And so she called me and said, hi, I'm in Iowa, and I'm leaving on Friday. And I was like, what? You know, your first time out of Iowa, you know, out of Gaza, and you're in Cedar City, you gotta come to California. So it was like, we just pulled a bunch of strings, and of course her parents were like, whoo. Yeah. But I knew her teacher at the university, because there was a bunch of students I just started having a relationship with, because we need their writing too for our blog. And so anyway, I got to meet her, and that's how. Yeah. And it was better than anything I could have, just anything I could have imagined having her there in person.
It's amazing how as adults, I mean, I say this all the time, I've learned the most in my life meeting these young women.
Yeah, they're just it's hard to describe.
Yeah, exactly.
How much quality is there.
When are they coming next?
Next summer. There are going to be 3 young leaders that we're going to make our foray into New York City in October. And they're going to speak and share the message at schools and other institutions. And they won't be here in the fall.
So you pay their airfare and everything to get here?
Yeah. And we do for the summer session too.
And for when they meet back home, for the Palestinians who need permits, we arrange for all of that too. Our budget's about $600,000.
Ooh, that's a lot.
Well, it's expensive work because it's deep work. Right. It's not. There are a lot of other camps around the world where, you know, they bring in young people for the camp, and that's it. So
it's a one-time event, and what we do is we basically offer them the support they need in the way we can do it as much as possible throughout the year. And hearing some of the young leaders this year who left, right, whether it was the Gaza war or some other event, the army, and went away for years, we don't, you know, we don't tell them that they're not welcome back. Right. They know they're welcome, and for a few of them it was a couple years they were gone. And then they called and said, what do you think? And we said, absolutely, come on back. So. Thank you.
Thank you so
what
much.
Is the selection process like? I'm sorry.
selection?
Yeah, how do you select who comes?
There's an interview process, and it's written and personal, individual, and we're really attempting to look for leadership qualities in one, and also I mean, there's certain things that we can probably know that aren't going to work also, and it's word of mouth. That's how we recruit.
I want to say something. You know, I was born in Lebanon, in South Lebanon,
Yes.
and so I grew up from the time I was born and with the Palestinian situation. So I lived it, my family lived it. And as a person who did not know about peace, all we lived was war and hatred. And I'm so proud of Lamia because she really opened something to me that I fought it for all my life, that I just didn't find the love and peace in my heart for the other side.
Mm-hmm.
But when I talked to her, and she's really, I'm very impressed by the way, you know, she's living this way of life, and I'm just so thankful to her, really, Lamia, because I feel much better, and it's the way to do it. I'm trying hard. It's a battle within me because I wasn't used to this.
Right.
I mean, peace was not something we thought about.
Yes.
Because the other side was always the enemy because they did so much, you know.
Right. But Helen, you highlighted, I mean, so what we try to do is, we don't try to do it, we do it. We teach peace from the inside out, right? So if there's a war going on in here, and I've been working on my own personal peace treaty for a long time, right? So if I have a big war going on in here, I can't go out to the world and try to work and create peace.
That's right.
It's not going to be happen. So that's what we begin with in New Mexico and continue to reinforce back at their homes, is that it's inside us. I mean, we came out of the womb with it, and then growing up we either forget about it or we never see it. It's not reinforced, and we begin to let them know that you know, we can change the world one person at a time, and it starts with them, and then see what happens.
Yeah, I think coming from a place where you really believe peace is possible is just essential, because if you don't, it's just a constant battle. Being involved with activism for years, because there's so much depressing stuff that happens, it's just knowing that there will be peace eventually. I don't know when, but there will be, and I believe in it. I believe that most people are good, and you know, so you have to believe all that stuff first, and know you can find a way. Otherwise, I think it would drive you crazy after years, you know, being an activist, because you have this feeling like it's never going to be possible. Well, what keeps you going?
And we have to remember that, like you said, in certain cultures, they've never experienced it. So you grew up with not knowing it. So how do we model it and embrace it and give them the strength and the courage, and now you, right?
Yeah.
To be it.
Believe
it.
It's a fight every day with me. I'm an older person,
yeah,
and I'm used to my ways.
Yes.
It's a fight for these young women too. I mean, when the young leaders spoke with us, they said, you know, it's a fight every morning because they.
Yeah, I think it is possible, even if there's a war going on. I don't know. I mean, it may still be possible to work for peace with something outside yourself. I mean, Mahatma Gandhi had a constant war going on inside him throughout his life with all sorts of things, with young girls and all sorts of, you know, experiments with truth. But he was able to bring peace outside somehow. But I can definitely see the need to be able to see the possibility of peace, like you said.
To believe it.
To believe. What was the word you used?
To believe that
it is possible.
Yeah, and that it will happen. I mean, I do believe it will happen. I don't think, you know, I think when we look back, I think if somebody living like 500 years today looked at this culture here, they would see how it like went away. Like, you know, the way history, when you look back at history, how it's not always, You know, we're...
It's not a direct line.
It's not a direct line, and this is a temporary thing. And for most of the history in the Middle East, too, these people got along. It was not the same as Europe. And it's a very difficult period, but it's temporary. Otherwise, you might as well just believe that my grandchildren have been sitting here in 50 years having the same fight about, you know, settlers in the middle of Jordan. You know, that's not going to happen. I mean, there will be some kind of resolution, there will be some kind of way that it clears up, you know, it's going to be, you know, and plus the people, yeah, the people in the region, they're going to want to resolve it too. I mean, I believe it. I have to believe it. This generation, specifically, these teenagers, this is the generation that are going to be doing it.
Just a couple of, I read once about the Middle East conflict. It's charged because it's got the theological portion. There's so many people all over the world watching their eyes, you know, whether they're Catholics or Protestants or Muslims. It's a very important part of the world. So it's a little more complicated, but I hope too for peace soon. But I was curious with Lamia, did you grow up in America?
I was born and raised here, yes.
Okay. Is that your mom?
My lovely aunt, yes.
I'm sorry. So your aunt. So you're like a bridge builder. That's really beautiful that you were brought here by Palestinian parents and you're you're importing or exporting back peace or whatever. That's really nice.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Real quick story. I was also brought up. I was brought up all over, but of Palestinian parents. I was brought up in Lebanon and Europe, and I have kids, 2 children. My husband's American, and in preschool, the first kids they liked were these little kids with white skin and dark hair. They turned out to have an Israeli dad and a German mom. I got to know the German mom, and then she was talking about the dad. She said, he grew up in a kibbutz in Israel. I thought, oh no. And then she said, would you like to get together for a meal? And I thought, oh boy. But I had to force myself, and you know, it does get human. But anyway.
Well, and that happened to me after 9/11, you know, because people would see me as, you know, a Palestinian or a Muslim or an Arab or an American or whatever label, and not know, they made assumptions like they were speaking about earlier. They made assumptions about my beliefs, and I realized that I was doing the same thing, you know,
their beliefs.
about their beliefs.
Who's there?
The Jewish people, Israeli people, whatever label. So I didn't. This work broke down that for me. So yeah, I mean, I've been one of the beneficiaries too. So 201 girls have been through. You had a question.
Oh, I was just going to mention that I do think there's something to be said for having like an experience outside of Israel and Palestine, because it just creates more of a neutral atmosphere, and then there's just also a way to, I don't know, like from what I have heard, you know, I've traveled a little bit in the West Bank and Israel, but there's just you know, this, especially from like the media, this constant you know, push of fear, and to get away from even that constant influence allows you to like set aside some fears and think clearly. But if you're just constantly bombarded with this, you know, this message, I think it's really hard, you know, even if a person's questioning, to make that jump, but remove them from the environment, and I think there's a real promise.
Yes, and it's such a peaceful place. It's neutral, it's peaceful. Even for the young leaders, we take them outside of Israel and Palestine to Cyprus, other places, so that they can step out and something similar to their experience here.
I grew up in the Mennonite church, so my father was a conscientious objector during the Second World War, and you know, my relatives were Mennonites. I lived in a Mennonite community, and that's the way I always thought about things, was that I didn't understand why people used violence to resolve conflicts, and I would never think any other way. So the fact that you even entertained the thought to think differently than you lived for so many years, I think is a wonderful thing that you've done. Because I couldn't do it.
I'm curious, the grievances the girls have. So obviously the Palestinians feel they're under occupation, so it's an ongoing grievance. What grievances do the Israeli girls bring to the table?
Fear.
Fear of the other Palestinian
You're
with
gonna
an
wipe.
accent.
You're gonna wipe us out.
Okay.
Don't
But
they all?
do they come with history from their parents?
You bet. Yeah, I mean, or grandparents.